seriously, I don't think anyone could really feel how annoyed I am. I just filmed a whole video and the content, like I really liked what I said and my mic wasn't on the whole time. And I hope that's gonna, and my mic wasn't on the whole time. And I tried to use it, I tried to just sit down and edit it and I can't put that up. I can't, it's so bad. So now I'm gonna do it again. And so let's get into it again. I feel like at least I've been talking for so long now that I'm feeling like really smooth. It is true, you gotta like warm up. So today we're talking about boys. We're talking about homeschooling boys, and we're talking about some of the mistakes / failures I made as a homeschooler, as I'm still making, I'm sure, but I just can't see them yet. But some of the things that I can look back with hindsight and go, that was a fail. And I call it a fail, not just a mistake, because it truly did affect my children. It affected the outcome, it affected how they learned, what they learned, how long it took them to learn. This is something I'm really open to talking about because I believe that we all need to be able to be open to looking back and assessing ourselves and assessing the quality of our work as homeschoolers. Essentially, we have to be able to look back from long term to even short term to go, how did I go in the last 3 months? How did I go last year? Where did I fail? Where did I feel really good? Where do I need more work? Where do I need to pull back? You need to constantly be self-assessing. And as well as to really talk about homeschooling boys, I can't really sit here and not mention some of the things that some of the mistakes I made, because it really affected what I learned about boys. So let's quickly get into it, because this is my second time round. And so yeah, now my kids are going to be playing. I did have them all take a book and go to bed for half an hour while I filmed, but that time is up. So now they're going to be playing, so you're probably going to hear them if this thing is on. I'm so annoyed. Anyway, I gotta stop talking about it. It's gonna be hard to edit out. All right. So let's get into it. Let's get into talking about, wait, first I need to do my intro. Okay, so my name is Sinead. I am a homeschool mum here in Australia of 6 children. I am currently homeschooling 4 of my 6. And I am a content creator behind thesimplemama.com, which is a blog and this YouTube channel all on motherhood, homeschooling, and child training. I like to be either on my blog doing new content there every week or here every week. I do sort of switch out since I'm very busy and I really don't have the time to do both, but I hope that this content is encouraging, that this content is helpful. If you haven't subscribed yet, then maybe listen to this video and give it a chance, and you can go and check out my other videos. Today, I really want to talk about homeschooling boys, because I think that not all boys are the same. Not all boys are like mine. Not all boys are going to have the same traits that I'm going to talk about today. If you have boys and they're on track, or they're early and they love school and they're academically minded, they love their bookwork, you know, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I know boys where that's happened. It's not a phenomenon. It's quite normal. But for me, from my track and from my family, it seems that my boys are not like that. Nothing. And at first, that was one of my mistakes, where at first I thought, well, I wanted them to be like that. You know, here I was, second generation homeschooler. I was supposed to succeed. I was supposed to do well. I should have known what I was doing. And while I did have a lot of confidence in what I did, and it did help me to not panic, I suppose, at the time, and I didn't, you know, throw in the towel or, you know, have a mental breakdown and what was happening, I did not feel good. Because my boys were really late to the game. I was teaching them and they weren't learning, essentially. I started when my eldest was 6, which for me was already, that was late enough. 6 is good. I've given him a year. You know, most kids start at 5 or 6, and I thought 6 is good. So we started. I had all my curriculum ready. I was extremely busy at the time. When he was 6, I had just had my 3rd baby in 3 years, which made my 5th baby overall. And yeah, I was ready to homeschool, but I was also tired and probably not homeschooling with the right mental capability. I'll be honest. And so it's probably what led me to make some of the mistakes I'm going to talk about today. But the mistake number 1 with homeschooling boys, and what I have found with my boys, and it has led me to be the homeschooler that I am today, is that I started way too early. When I look back now, I realize that if I had have just waited, if I had have worked on my learning lifestyle, if I had have just focused on life skills, lots of books, lots of reading, lots of playing outside, really minimizing the screen time and really sort of focusing on a learning lifestyle, I could have waited and just pulled up the phonics and things that I use for reading probably when they were 8, which is much different to what I did and is much different to what a lot of people do. It turns out that actually the age between 8 and 10 used to be normal school age. Many children did not go to school until they were 8. And to me, that makes total sense, because I think that anyone with common sense could look and go, the majority of children aren't ready until later. Doesn't mean that they don't enjoy some school aspects, doesn't mean that they can't get in and you can't do read alouds and some projects, but just that real formal learning, books and paper and pencils, and answering questions and learning to write and having to read and doing maths and things, I think some kids can enjoy a little bit, which is essentially how I have created my homeschool around, but they're not dreadfully interested in it. And for me, having 3 boys as all my eldest, I had 3 boys straight up. And so that's why I have a lot of experience homeschooling. I mean, my only experience homeschooling, I have one girl, she's 6. She does homeschool, but I would still count her even though she's a girl, and she's definitely much different temperament to her brothers. I would still not count her as ready. I would not go and just launch her into reading just because she's interested in learning. I have tried, I've introduced her to the reading materials that I use, and she's just, you can see the light disappear from her eyes when it gets very repetitive. And I think, okay, she's not ready, and I just let her take part. We do read alouds, she does all her painting, and we have conversations, and that's all it is. She does maths and things like that. She knows how to write her name. She's learning, but we're just not doing it in that real formal way. And so that's where really the highlight of the first mistake I've made. It's not something that I've never talked about here on this channel. You probably already know that I've said this in the past. I don't start my kids too early. That really doesn't go if they're boys or girls, because I have a girl and she's 6, and I don't think she'll be starting reading. But then again, I think she's not 6 until the middle of next year, July. I can see me picking up and beginning the phonics process with her when we start the school year next year. And I can, from what I'm predicting and what I know, I think she'll be ready for it, especially if I keep on going the way we are with her learning every day. But yeah, that's a big thing. Don't be afraid to wait, especially if you have boys. I think so many boys, they're just not interested. They're interested for a little while and a little bit. And you do have to sort of, I like my boys to know how to write their name, write the date, interact with people, life skills. They do their maths. I did always do maths when they were little. I do believe in that. I think it's a great problem solving based learning, and numbers just aren't so hard to figure out as letters and all the sounds are. So I think a lot of boys are ready for maths at an early age. But you don't have to begin this formal process. And if you find that your boy just hates it, doesn't enjoy it, you don't know how to teach it, and you feel like it's just really flunking, then maybe you do need to just wait. And I understand that's really difficult because you might be registered and you've got quotas and things to, you have to re-register, and you've got people essentially looking over your shoulder going, well, what's going on? We want to see work next year. That's how it is here in Australia. We have people come to our homes and inspect. So you still have that, but trust me, there are so many runarounds from that. Like, just do read alouds and some art projects, really, that really does go a long way. Go outside and go to the park, call that PE, catch a fish and dissect it. There's your science. There is so much things that you can do with boys that they will absolutely love. Take a couple of photos of what you're doing every day. You do have to make a learning lifestyle. Like, it is still an investment of time and effort, but it's just not at the table with school books. And I think that your boys will probably really thrive with that. It's something that I realized that if I had have done, not only would it have helped me because I had babies and, I had babies and an infant and a toddler all in one. And I was really busy and exhausted, and I was putting this load of homeschooling on myself. And also coming to terms with the fact that why weren't my boys learning? Like, I thought that was my fault completely. And although I was making some mistakes back then, which would have impacted their ability to learn. But essentially, I just realized, hey, in the end, and it wasn't just on my own, like my mum was there telling me, like she's homeschooled me, she's homeschooled all my siblings, and she would mention, hey, they're probably just not ready, just take it easy. And I'll be like, yeah, you're probably right. And then I would be like a week later, be like, no, we have to do something. This, I can't do nothing. And now I realize, having more life experience, that there's so much other things I could have introduced to them that I didn't, because I just didn't count that as learning. So that's one of those things too. Like, I'm a girl, and obviously. And I'm a big book reader. I love to read, love to talk. Like that's my real ideal learning. That's how it looks, you know. So for me too, when my boys wouldn't read and they didn't want to read, even now they can read, but they don't want to read. I'm like, read this book, it's great. But for me, like I'm an avid reader, I read every day, but they're just not into that. And it doesn't mean that they won't be in the future. I would be nice if one of them was, but it was me letting go of that ideal, of that expectation that that's what learning was, because they're by no means not intelligent. They just don't have the same intelligence that I thought was intelligence. And sometimes too, it's just unlearning that expectation as mums of what intelligence is and what it looks like, and how it reveals itself, especially when they're little, is a big basis on a lot of dissatisfaction in our homeschooling and a lot of what we call failure. But really, it's just we have to reimagine how we're going to approach this, especially when they're very young. Okay, so that leads me to number 2. One of the biggest mistakes that I made is not being consistent. I was not consistent, and I know that this was the hugest, most epic fail on my part, and it really influenced how quickly my boys were able to pick up. So I used to wonder, if I had have been consistent, would my boys have been reading right on time? And I used to wonder that until I was very consistent. I'm very consistent now, and I have boys, and I'm teaching my 3rd youngest boy, and he is 7.5. He's only just starting the reading process now. I predict with my all-knowingness that he will probably be reading at the age of 8.5, maybe closer to 9, because you never know what kind of hurdles you're going to come on in the end. But I think though, I'm hopefully 8.5 with like some serious consistency. And that is the kind of game plan that I didn't realize I really had to make with myself when I had little boys. And that was, I had to choose one thing to do each day that would have been ideal, which would have been a reading lesson. And I had to nail that reading lesson every day. And it had to be sometimes boring and repetitive. It only has to go for like 10 minutes, no longer. But I wasn't doing that. I thought that by giving them different things and introducing them to new ideas, that was going to broaden the horizons, and that was going to hopefully pull interest. And I thought that by doing more, I was creating more opportunity for them to pick something up. What I didn't realize is that by doing more, I didn't have time to be consistent, and I was already extremely busy. So now what I know is that if you're struggling with little kids, even if they're not boys, no matter who you're homeschooling, you must be consistent. You have to nail, whether it's that math lesson or that reading lesson or whatever they're struggling with right now, you've got to be consistent, you've got to make it repetitive, and you've got to get it every single day. And that is something that you cannot have any shortcuts with. You can't have any feelings on. It can't be, I'm not in the mood, I'm too tired, I'm busy. It's like, no, there's going to be an alarm set. That alarm goes off, the reading basket or the reading trolley is ready. We're going to read. And again, it's not this long, it's not an hour lesson, it's not a half an hour lesson, it's like 10 to 20 minutes. You're in, you're out, you get it done. It feels so good when you do it every day. I used to actually keep a calendar. Like I heard from Jerry Seinfeld, not from him personally, but I did read this thing about Jerry Seinfeld and how he would read, and he had this calendar that he would mark with a red X. And he said the only thing that's going to make you succeed is having that calendar full at the end of the year and knowing that you've done your writing quota every single day. And that's exactly how I treated it. It's a job. You got to show up. You will succeed. That is not something that I realized I had to be like when I was first starting out. I thought a day off here, 2 days off there, a week off here because we went here, we went there, we did that. We were busy, we were doing things, we weren't sitting at home doing nothing, but it wasn't good enough. I had to get that reading lesson in. And while I am like that now, I wouldn't say it has completely changed, but look, now I have a 7-year-old and a 7.5-year-old who is probably at the same place they were a year later because I've been consistent for the last only 3 or 4 months since I introduced him. I knew to introduce him late, he seemed ready. And that leads me to my 3rd big mistake, and that was confidence. I did not build confidence in my boys. As a mum, and as a woman, we have our own love language. Well, not love language, but we have a way that we relate. We want to help people by loving them, by caring for them. And look, children need that. They love their mum. They want hugs and cuddles, and they want affirmation for sure. But a boy's type of affirmation is different to what a girl needs, and it's different to what we need. So often we can confuse. And so sometimes for us, when it comes to homeschooling, and for me, if I'm going to really put it onto reading, I would go, hey, just try. I don't care if you get it wrong. While that's a nice approach, that's actually not what a boy wants to hear. What you first need to do is find an activity for them that's in the scope of reading, that is going to give them confidence and going to give them, hey, I can do this. Because once a boy feels confident, that is when he's going to try. And I didn't know this. So with my third boy, the reason why I was able to begin earlier than usual was we did games and activities that gave him confidence. We would do things like, whenever you hear the sound in a word that I say, I want you to stamp your feet. Whenever you hear a rhyming word that I say, out of 5 words and there's 2 that rhymes, I want you to clap. And when he started to listen to what I was saying, and when we had the flashcards and our alphabet chart out, and he would realize that those sounds that he had learned as just sounds I was using, that we all use all the time. And I think some kids don't make that connection. Some make it really early, and they're usually early readers. But if your child doesn't make that connection, you can teach them confidence by playing games that you can just come up with and go, what can I do to help my child figure out what the sound is and what I'm saying? And it can be anywhere from like playing a game, activities, snap, card games, it can be there's just so much you can come up with when you just spend 10 minutes and go, just try this. So that's what I realized with my third. And he got really, really confident. And so once he was confident that he could actually figure out what sounds were, that he could hear a sound, identify a sound, it got really fun for him. And that's when I sort of pulled out the book. And we actually changed up the curriculum. We did 100 easy lessons, learn to read in 100 easy lessons. And that's really helped him because he has a slight speech impediment as well. And I found that I still use the McGuffies, and my older boys are still going through the McGuffies. But I found that with his learning style, the 100 easy lessons has really suited that. And we've started also using the Reading Freedom workbooks, which kids love because it's easy and simple. It has the pictures, but it's really helping them to identify sounds. So if you haven't heard of either or of them, I will link them down below where you can access them. And I do have actually a whole project coming out on reading, hopefully early next year, which will be launching, I want to say, if I'm going to be a professional, next year, all on reading. So if you want to just hold on to that, if you're struggling, or if you know someone who's struggling with that and you think might be helpful, well, I will obviously be talking more about that in the future. And that doesn't really lead me to, other than the fact that I'm talking really fast to get this over and done with. I talked way too much. I still do. I start talking about something that I'm really interested in, usually like a history or science or something like that. And my kids love the first few minutes, and then I'll go on, and you just see this glazed look of complete boredom and desperation to leave the premises. And I think that in general, and I read this book, I don't know who wrote it. She has a podcast. I'll link her down below. And it's a book on raising boys. I'll link the podcast and the book down below, but it's a really quick little read. And she was saying how boys don't like too much words. And I think she was talking about teenage boys. But once I read that, I was like, hey, that's probably my boys too, just even though they're much younger. Boys just don't need a lot of words. I find with school in general, keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it simple. Boys, they want to get in and out. They want to do their workload. They're like, yes, mum, I'm done. Pack it up, put it away, and get back outside, or get back to building Lego, or whatever they were doing. Boys have very little interest for sitting around having chats. Whereas my girl, she's 6, she loves a chat, and sometimes I'm like, girl, you can talk. And I know she gets it from me. So it's like, understanding that, look, some boys are going to love a chat. I'm not saying this is just the thing, but I think, okay, I've got 3 boys. They're all the same. I'm sure some of you have boys like me. You don't need to talk a lot. You just need to do the read aloud, close it, and get out. They're going to appreciate that more than you trying to offer more and increase the learning, opportunities by speaking and speaking and speaking. They don't need that. They don't want that. And even in general, when it comes to giving them instructions for a choice or a job, for something that they have to do or learn, less is more, always with the words, less is more. They appreciate it so much. And I mean, coming to speak of like with my husband, I always talk way too much to him too. And I realize that a lot of the time, less is more. They don't need a lot of words like we do. And yeah, that's a big thing with boys, especially I think boys of any age. I mean, obviously little boys, read to them, talk to them. I'm not saying that look at your boy from now on and never say a word, but understand that if you are a talker like me and you like to sort of add value to the lessons and you see an opportunity to go, hey, did you know this? Look, sometimes they're going to be in the mood, they're going to listen, they're going to love it. And sometimes when they want to go outside, they're like, Mum, school's over, I want to go. And my boys have never really said that to me, but you can see it in their faces and they start to sort of huff and they kind of, you know, get a bit bored and you're like, okay, you're done, you're ready to go. So that was my big problem. I mean, it wasn't a huge problem, but I think that it's probably relevant in a lot of our lives as women, as mothers. Last problem, not a problem, but an aspect that I think is really important in boys' lives. And I think that, well, I hope that it's not a mistake that I make in the future, so I'm trying to prevent it now, is competence. I'm the kind of, well, when I say this, I mean, I'm the kind of, no, I just said that again. In our household, we live out of town, and for us, getting into town, which is around 20 to 30 minute drive, depending on the roads and the weather and sort of all that kind of stuff. So it's a 60-minute round trip. We don't do sports in town. We don't do sports. We don't do soccer. We don't do football. We don't do Aussie rules. We don't do cricket. We don't do anything. The only thing that I do is I go in once a week with all of my kids in one afternoon, and we do swimming lessons. Because here, you know, everyone's in water all the time in summer and kids got to learn how to swim. But for me, that was a big thing. I still sometimes feel like, oh, I should take them in, you know, they need to learn, they need to socialize, and more importantly, I want them to be competent. I don't want them to be incompetent when they're 15, 16, because me and my husband sort of sat down and we said, look, this is what we're going to have. We have motorbikes here. We've got so much space. They've got push bikes, and we go for hikes in town. We go for bike rides. They're always out and busy, but I want them to be competent. So I'm like, okay, I want them to be fit and strong. I don't want them to be lazing around, and I want them to have skills that I can help pass on. Like we could get out there with a soccer ball and cones, and we can learn how to dribble balls. We could play soccer, we can play handball, we can get tennis rackets, we can play table tennis. There's so many sort of activities you can get for your kids. And I know this is just really generalized and a lot of people do this anyway, but make sure that you're offering your boys the opportunity to be competent. I think it's really important. I think it sets them up. So I think you really need to offer your boys the opportunity to be competent. I think it's really, really important because boys can be really affected, I think, in the long term if they're not. And it's really hard for them to make up, especially if you're like me and you've made that choice. Not only did we make that choice because the town trip was a bit out of reach, especially we've got a van and all that, but because we just wanted to protect our kids and our meal times and our evenings. You know, it's so draining to be out of the house all the time. And look, if we move and we live closer to town or in town and my boys get even a little bit older, they can go off to training on their bikes, they can go here, they can go there, and that may happen in the future, I don't know. But we try and provide as much as we can for them, things to do and skills to create here on our property. But I still want to work on competence because I think that for me, there's nothing worse than a boy who is just incompetent in a lot of things, especially physically things. Like I think he has to provide for a family. He has to be able to work hard. And it doesn't mean that everyone works physically, but I think just that mental capability to push yourself, that's sort of what I'm talking about. Learn a new skill, get out of your comfort zone, maybe embarrass yourself in front of people. Like teenagers really aren't good at that in general. Embarrassing yourselves. But I just want my boys to have that ability to try to be strong, to not shy away at hard work and not shy away from an opportunity that might be uncomfortable. And I think that comes from me as a mum being hard on them and going, you're going to get out there. I know it's a little bit hot, but you're going to go for a run, and I'll go for a run with them. You know, like I exercise and I try and show my boys that you have to do things that you don't necessarily want to do every day. And I think that's a big one for us as mothers. We can tend to make our kids a little bit too comfortable. And I think that you really should strive to give them opportunities that's more uncomfortable. And I heard a saying not long ago on a podcast, and I was like, oh, that's just fantastic. I need to write that down. and then I forgot. But it essentially was boys thrive when they're able to work, when they're able to really put their hands to work and actually have a contribution to make to the family and a contribution to themselves. So for example, we're working on getting a really big chicken collection, like a live, for the eggs. And I'm like to my 12-year-old, you're in charge of that. You keep them healthy. You feed them. You water them. You keep them clean. You get the eggs, and the excess eggs you can sell. And really giving him that as an enterprise, and to go, look, the more money you make, the more chickens you can get. And it's just going to keep going round and round, and letting him see a household chore as a possibility to be valuable and as a possibility to earn money. And I think that if you can give your boys and girls that opportunity, it goes a really, really long way. And so that's where I'm at with homeschooling boys. And yeah, I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that I didn't talk too fast. I'm sorry. I just had to get in here and get it done. At least I think I went so well, I don't have to edit. So that's nice. But yeah, I think that I wouldn't say again that all boys are like this. I wouldn't say that, this is my boys. This is my experience. This is how I have, adapted and changed. And when it comes to saying that I made failures in homeschooling, that I, did things that made mistakes, I want to say that I don't say that to glorify them or to think that they're not detrimental in some areas. They are, they are, and I'm not glorifying them. I'm not saying, well, here's the mistakes I made, and if you've made the same, you're just fine. Like, no. Acknowledge your mistakes. I look back and I think they were mistakes, and if I had have rectified them, who knows where my boys would be now. And that is a little bit of an element that I have to live with now. And while I still believe in starting late, in all those things, I wouldn't be on here talking about it all the time if I didn't. And so therefore it leads me to think, okay, maybe my consistency wasn't all that big. I do have a tendency to be really hard on myself. So I think maybe, obviously it was a mistake, but maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. Maybe it wouldn't have changed much because just in general, they don't really have an interest. I know when my boys are older, in their teenage years, in high school, they'll probably develop more of an interest, especially as I really open up the educational world. Like my eldest is 12 and his educational horizons are opening. He's getting more and more subjects. We're trying more and more things. He's learning online and all that kind of thing. So it's like, okay, the world opens up when they get older. And I know that eventually, he's already saying, I like this and I like that and I don't like this. Interests are growing. So when he gets older, he'll have things that he's really competent in. When they're little, they just don't have that, not in my experience. They just want to go outside. They want to ride their bikes. They want to ride their motorbikes. They want to go fishing. They want to, build the cubby houses or build the huge Lego castle that they're making. They don't want to sit and do school for ages. They don't have a huge interest. It's get in, get it done, get out. And that's okay. That's okay for the first 6-7 years of homeschooling. You don't have to expect more from your children. It will come. It will come when you just really work on your lifestyle, clean up your act with your lifestyle. Get off your phone, get your kids off phones and iPads and screens, get them outside. Get them cooking, get them working, get their days busy and filled. If you're going to do less schoolwork, I think you do have to really go, hey, there is so much richness in life that we can learn through life skills. It doesn't have to be book learning. And I really think that book learning is just not optimal for a child when they're young. There is so much to learn that's not in a book. So that's all I really have to say on the topic. I've been talking now for 29 minutes, so that's enough. I hope this video was helpful. I hope that it encouraged you if you have boys and girls who sound a little bit like mine. And if you've made mistakes in the past similar to mine, know that you can fix them, you can rectify them. There is no horrible, long-lasting damage, but it's okay to say, I failed. I'm going to learn from that. That's learning. That is homeschooling. And if you have to be you need to be okay with failure as a homeschooler, because you will fail. It is guaranteed. It's just when and where. And for how long? Because if you're not doing self-assessment, if you are not looking back, if you're not essentially keeping an eye on yourself and on your lifestyle and how you're living your days as a homeschooler, then maybe the fails will take a long time to rectify and do more damage. And it's really, might be hard to hear, maybe it's not really said much, but that is really completely true. And we need to be able to support each other, encourage each other, and keep each other a little bit accountable, even if it's just by watching someone else and going, if she can do that, maybe I can too. And that's really what it comes down to with homeschooling. It's constantly learning and growing, making mistakes, fixing them up, and learning from them. That is what you're going to do until the last day. So you better get okay with it, because you got to be, and you got to just be able to smile and go, all right, we're going to keep on going. And that is what I've done, and that's why I feel like I'm very much a richer mother for what I have learned from my boys. And I'm very glad that I had them first, because I think if I had have gone from my girl first and had an ideal set, it would have been much harder to unlearn that again and have boys. So I'm very grateful that they came first, and then I had 3 first. So I feel like the third one, he's really getting my best work. And yeah, so I hope this video was encouraging. I'm going to go now. I'm going to chuck this up now, and I hope that it was helpful and I didn't ramble on like I have a tendency to do. So until next time, bye.